the only difference. For material, you don't really need to say material, then that's no. But for Cupertino, you actually need a keyword to be able to use that widget. Okay, and also for you to use Cupertino widgets, definitely you import that file for Cupertino. Yeah. Then layout widgets. Layout widgets are what enable us to build applications that make sense in terms of how you align your data. Okay. So for me, by layout, I always try to keep it simple. Rows and columns. How many rows? How many columns? Okay. A row can have multiple columns. Okay. And a column can have multiple rows. So that is the thing about Flutter. You can nest a lot of widgets in form of rows and columns, and just according to how you design it, whether you want it to be easy for guys to use or you want to put too much data in one place, you see how to use how many rows and columns you're going to use. And then some of the most popular widgets that you rarely miss when you're designing Flutter apps is one of them is a container. Okay, we are going to look at that also. A container. What is a container? It's basically a box. Okay, so you can say I want this container, and inside this container I want to put, let's say, a list of images. Okay, so container can have other properties. Okay, like height of the container, width, and then you want its corners to be rounded or you want them to be squared. Okay, so you can give it different properties. You can also change the color, the color of the container. Then there's a center widget. So a center widget is used to center certain items. By centering, it means putting it in the middle of a certain widget. So if you're centering immediately after your scaffold widget, it means whatever you put there is going to be displayed in the middle of the screen of the user. Whether the screen is a laptop, a smartphone, or a tablet, you'll center it. And then row. A row is a layout widget, and it arranges the item in the horizontal direction, whatever items you put in it. So a row can take in multiple items. You can have a row of text, images, and whatever other widgets you want. Okay, but it arranges them in the horizontal direction. And then we have columns. Columns arrange items in the vertical direction. So you can put as many items in it. So in Flutter, they are called children. A column can have children, multiple children that are arranged in the vertical direction. Okay. Then there's a stack. A stack means arranging one item above the other. For example, in real life, we can have a stack of plates from the very last plate that is always at, let's say, on the floor, at the bottom of a table, to the very topmost plate. And always the topmost plate is the one that you access the first. So same case is with Flutter stack widgets. You can stack items on top of each other, meaning there are items that you can even hide by stacking them too much. Okay. Yeah, we shall also look at that probably. Then we have state maintenance widgets. So in Flutter, we have widgets that are either derived from stateless widgets or stateful widgets. So you can have screens that are either stateful or stateless. Okay, and this is also a very big property that determines how data can be manipulated on that widget or that page. For example, if you want to first store, let's say, a user's email and password and try to validate it, it is best that you use a stateful widget, because a stateful widget will be able to store such information for some time on that screen. Okay. And then for the boilerplate code that a Flutter app comes with, there's usually a program for a counter. So a counter is basically a program, in this case, that increases the value of a certain variable by 1 each time you tap a certain button. Okay. So that's what they're saying here. It will increase the internal state of the counter by 1 when you touch that button. So each time you touch a button, the variable is updated, the value is incremented by 1, and then Flutter re-renders, okay? It re-renders the whole thing. Then we have what they call platform-independent widgets. These are simple widgets that don't matter whether you're on Android or you're programming for iOS. A very common example that is it rarely escapes each screen is text. Okay, so text is basically something that is used for showing words. Okay, you can even use it for showing symbols. So a text widget is independent of a platform. Okay, then there's what they call icons. You can use an icon can take in either a type of Cupertino or a type of what? A type of material. So it's also something that is independent. It doesn't dictate which platform you should render from. And then there's what they call an image. So image widgets are also platform independent. You don't say this image is for iOS and then this image is for Android. There is no specific way to render images on either Android or iOS only. Yeah. So let's dive into a coding session. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to be using VS Code. Okay. So for those of you who have Flutter installed right now, and you can be able to create an app the way we did in the beginning of this session and open it in VS Code. So after doing that, like I said, this is how the structure of our program will look like, the Flutter program. Okay, this is how it will look like. So the things that we shall majorly be laying around will be the main.dat file. Yeah. And then inside here, we are going to be able to see how we are going to structure. How do you structure a proper application? How do you structure an app that is built in Flutter? How do you organize it such that if you're working in a team of over 100 people, people don't get lost in the code? Okay, if you come back to your code after 30 days, you can actually be able to add on other stuff without interrupting other teams who are working on the same code base. And also, if an error occurs, are you able to quickly capture the part where the error is? If you want to make a change, can you make a change that can be reflected in every part of an app, or you'll have to go to each code file and be able to change manually? Okay, so those are some of the things that we shall look at when we're structuring. Okay? So today, let's dive into, first and foremost, what do we need to code Flutter when we're using VS Code? Okay, so we need extensions. Okay, so there's an extension called Dart. Okay, so I've already installed it. This extension basically helps us run that code. Okay, so that means it can also help us run Flutter code. So this is an official one, and it's from dartcode.org. Okay, you can see the number of downloads, about 9.6 million downloads, and it has about 5 stars. It's a very important extension. Yeah, and then on top of that, we have Flutter extension. So for Flutter, you can download the official ones also. So this is like an official Flutter extension. I already downloaded it. It has about 8.7 million downloads as of now. So it also adds support for Flutter. For example, if you have, let's say, a bug in your code, a bug is simply an error. It can show you before you even try to run your code. It shows you that this code has this problem and you should possibly, let's say, fix it or delete it. Okay, and it also gives you sample information on what the original code is supposed to look like, or which rules you're breaking that you have to definitely look up and be able to come and debug your code. Yeah, so these other widgets you see here that I've installed, these are extensions, are basically extensions that help me make my life easier. For example, Flutter widget snippets. If I don't want to code certain things from scratch, okay, I just install these extensions and then I put a keyword, and then it shows me that it shows me the name of like a widget that I want to type. And then I press, let's say, tab or enter, and then it auto-completes for me the code. So it makes my coding way faster. Okay. So the point I'm trying to drive home right now is that you should master the concepts and don't cram code. Never cram code, because code keeps changing. And also never get attached to the code that you've written. For example, you've written some code and let's say you've spent 3 hours on it, writing it, but it's not running. It's not running and it is totally a mess and you don't know how to fix it. So if someone tells you to first, let's say, delete it so that you can be able to reproduce the error, don't say, no, I spent too much time on this code. Sometimes it's best to just start afresh, okay? But I'm not saying about a whole organization's code. For example, if you've built a whole app and then some bug comes, yes, it doesn't make sense to delete the code, but then don't get attached to your code. Always know that code is disposable. So if things are not working, sometimes you delete it and then you start afresh. Good enough, we have AI tools that can help us generate code. Okay, but for you to be able to use AI also to generate code, you must already know what you're doing. Okay, you cannot use AI alone to build an app. Okay, you must at least have an idea of what you're doing. Yeah, so these are the extensions. Yeah, I installed a couple of them, but you can install as many as possible, but I thought these were enough for me. So Flutter, then Flutter widget snippets, then awesome Flutter snippets, then Flutter tree. These ones are just for helping me build basic Flutter tree widgets. Okay, so if you look at this, this is a main function inside the main.dat file. So it is like the entry point for the whole program. Okay, so at the end of it all, a Flutter app is just a Dart program. Okay, it's a Dart program at the end of it all, and we have also seen how we can run Dart programs. Okay, so for this case, I have an emulator that is going to be helping me run my Dart programs. Okay, an emulator for an Android phone. It's an emulator for, let's say, a Google Pixel. Yeah, so we have what we call for this Flutter app, we have a class my app, and it extends a stateless widget. Okay, so this is the syntax for extending. So by a stateless widget, it means here we don't expect certain values to be changing. So we just make it stateless. Okay, so then we return a material app. Okay, so when we return a material app, we're basically telling Flutter that the designs we're going to be using in this app for now should look like those for iPhone, for Android phones, okay? And then we give it a title, okay? So here we can change the title and we say, let's say library app. Okay, then here, library app home page. So when we looked at that programming, we also looked at the concept of constructors when we're looking at object-oriented programming. Okay. Constructors. So the class my home page is a stateful widget, meaning a stateful widget has data that the value keeps changing or can change. That's why we have a variable title here. But the key point is it has a constructor. For this part, we have a constructor library app. Okay. A constructor title, we are passing the value library app to it. So it's going to give this variable, the word library app. And then inside our widget itself, we're going to display it here. Okay. So a stateful widget has two parts. Usually there's this one that extends the stateful widget itself. Then inside here, you can declare your variables that you want to be class-wide. And then we shall also be able to extend that this other child. So this is where we use multi-level inheritance, where we say that a child inherits from another child. So this child is inheriting from this child whose parent was stateful widget. Yeah, but after some time, you don't have to cram these aspects. It just comes naturally. Okay, so you don't have to cram these aspects. So this is a home page. The home page screen that we were talking about in our presentation. It's how you can bootstrap your Flutter app. This is a basic Flutter app, and it's also ready for running. I'm going to run it so that we see what it can show us before we start manipulating it and creating, trying to play around with widgets so that we can understand it. Yeah. So this is our emulator. I just need you to confirm for me if you can see it. Yeah, can you guys see the emulator?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes, we are seeing it, yes.
All right. So this is our emulator. Let me just close. This was a previous Flutter program. So I have not yet run this program. Okay. So this is what they call a counter app. Everyone who creates a Flutter program, a Flutter app, the first code you see is always what? A counter program. It has been there for years. It never changes. So what a Flutter program, a basic one like this does, it shows you concepts of a stateful widget and a stateless widget and something concerning state management. Okay. So this is widget-based state management, whereby the state is only what? For this widget. Meaning the value of a variable, let's say counter, it starts from 0. And then as someone presses a button somewhere, the value keeps increasing by 1. And how does it increase? There's a function here that is responsible for increasing its value by 1. Okay, that's why when you see counter plus plus, this means we're going to increase the current value of counter by 1 each time that button is pressed. So then there's what they call a set state. So set state is an inbuilt method in stateful Flutter widgets that is used for refreshing the screen. Okay, so this one here simply tells Flutter that each time someone presses that button, okay, increase the counter value by 1 and then refresh the screen. So if the value that was being displayed previously was, let's say 0, then someone presses the button, it increases its value by 1 and refreshes the screen. So you will see 1 as the new value. Okay. So this is what we're talking about, a scaffold. So just know scaffold is a very important widget. You can have a background color and other properties. Also, you can never use all the properties of some of these widgets. So it's according to what you want to come up with that you be able to change. For example, I may not want to specify a background color here. I can just comment this. Okay. I can just comment it if I don't want to specify, let's say, background color. I comment it and I will not have errors. Okay. But important things include having a title. At least give your app a title if you're using, let's say, an app bar. Okay. So that being said, let me try to run it. So another important way to know that your emulator or device for testing the app that you're building is loaded is by seeing this downer part of your VS Code. For example, right now I'm seeing Pixel 7a. Okay. So it's my device that is connected. Yeah, so for me to be able to run, which here we shall again see another powerful property of Flutter, whereby we know that there's something called hot reloading. So hot reloading means that the moment you change something in your code, it's immediately reflected in the application that you're trying to build. Okay? So here I am building with that functionality. I want to be able to hot reload my code. So let me just try to minimize this editor so that I can be able to look at the emulator and the source code at the same time. Yeah. So this is how your code, you basically be when you're programming. One part of your editor usually has the names of the files you're trying to work on. Then another one has the names of the screens. Another one has the source code, the actual source code that you're trying to modify. Yeah. So here, our program has actually built. So this is a default Flutter icon. Okay. This is a default Flutter icon. Yeah, so it's building. It has actually launched. So you notice that there's a point where we renamed something. So here we renamed the title of this homepage to library app homepage. Here it is. Okay. Then there's another aspect. If I don't want this word to be shown, there's this property inside the material app that says debug show check mode banner. I turn it to false because I don't like seeing that word. Yeah. So this is also something that you're always going to put in your Flutter apps if you don't want that tag to be seen, because that tag usually shows that your app is just new, but I don't want it to be seen. Okay. So when we're looking at that programming, we talked about classes, and here we are now seeing classes, the class keyword, what. So classes have properties and they have actions that you can, or methods that you can use to work on these properties. Okay, so here we can see, let's say, property counter, then there can be a method increment counter. Same concepts that we're seeing when we're looking at classes. Okay, but in this case, also when we talked about a floating action button, when we're looking at the slides, this is what they call a floating action button. So what does it do? It floats, okay? So if you can look at this thing looks like a shadow here, okay? This shows that something is floating, okay? Floating. So it's a floating action button. This is an icon, okay? So when we click this, okay, you'll see that this value increases by 1, 2, 3, like that. So that is basically a floating action button. It is built into, it's usually built into Flutter as long as you've used this scaffold. So a property of a scaffold can be a floating action button. So you can add it to any screen you want if you want to build an app in this style. But this is just a basic Flutter program that what shows up for us. So that being said, today I want to invite some questions as of now. Okay, let me invite some questions before I start. Before we dive into looking at some layouts, because we want to handle layouts as we are feeding widgets. We're feeding some data into those layouts. So we're going to basically create text widgets for now, and then we see how we can feed this text into columns, rows. Okay? How do they work? Then we are going to look at how to size our what? How to size our, let's say, containers, because sizing is very important also. Okay, so basically that is what I want us to look at today. So I want us to spend some minutes right now throwing in questions. You can throw in questions from Dart or Flutter right now. Yeah, so that's what I want to first invite before we go any further. Yeah, so if someone has any questions, you can just ask right now. Any question? Any question?
Yes. Yes. This is Peter.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. I have a question. Since the beginning of the training, I followed the instruction that are supposed to be followed for downloading all the Flutter development app.
Yes.
And it is very difficult. I tried to download it on my smartphone. It is very difficult. I try also to download on my computer, and my computer is operating on Windows. This is Windows 11, and it is very difficult even. I don't know what will be the solution for this.
Okay. So I'm assuming the difficulty you're meaning is you're not getting to the part where the download starts. Or there are two things. You're not getting to the part where the download starts, or the download actually starts, but the internet is not able to support the full download of the whole Flutter SDK file. So which of those is it? Is it you're not able to get the actual link for the download?
Yes, maybe I'm not sure whether I was not following the correct procedures of downloading, because I was the one trying by myself, and it's very difficult even.
Okay. So I think that is noted. I've noted it down. So after this, we're going to share a link. Actually, I can do it right now, but I don't think you'll have enough time to set it up. A link for downloading the Flutter SDK.
Okay.
Yeah, so because it's actually free, you just have to have some internet so that it can download. Yeah, so
even on smartphone.
yeah, you can downloading doesn't affect if you can download it on smartphone, it's also okay. But if you can hotspot your laptop and also you download it using the laptop, there is no problem. As long as you've downloaded that zipped file, then you'll unzip it from your computer. And when you unzip it, you specify that you want it to be inside a folder called Android in local disk C. And usually this folder, you have to create it yourself. So if you have not yet created it, you create it, then you'll unzip the Flutter folder also inside it. And then you can now follow up with the slides that were in the first session. Yeah. But this is really something that is not so hard. We just need to be more vigilant as we try to look for those download links. Yeah, because I really want everyone to be able to build something at the end of this all, because there are advanced concepts that are coming, and we are going to need to be able to try them practically. On top of that, this week we are going to have a takeaway, let's say, simple project. It's going to be really simple for us to try to implement and see if we can grasp the concepts that we have learned so far. Yeah. We're going to have a simple project just for assessment methods. Yeah. So basically, thank you for that question. It is. We're going to try our best to share that direct download link. I'm going to share the direct download link whereby when you click it, you just get the file itself. The file starts downloading, not the whole download page, but the exact file starts downloading. So that's what we're going to share later on. Yeah. So is there any other question concerning that, what we have so far?
Okay, mine is not a question.
Hello.
Thank you for the presentation of today. And I was there for the last presentation, starting up to the end of the last week. So for me, I have received all the links that you have sent to me. But what I realized from where I am is maybe is because of the network. But we thank God I'm now in Malacca. But I will also try in my office if I can manage to download. In case of any failure, I will let you also know for your support actually to help me in some practice part as I'm seeing they have need some practice. So this is what I can say for now. And thank you.
All right, thank you for that feedback. But you guys always feel free to inbox me. I'm usually online. If I'm not mistaken, my WhatsApp is usually online 24/7. So you can always inbox me, and when I see your message, I try my best to be able to reach out to you. If I respond too late and you're not with your phone, at least I'll leave a message there, and we can schedule some time and be able to fix whatever problems you have. Yeah. So for the installation issue, I really hope that we can settle that for everyone so that we all have the SDK and get straight to coding. Yeah, so thank you. So let me now get into the actual coding. So this is the code that usually comes with every Flutter application. Okay. This is the code. But then another thing that I'm going to introduce right now is how to structure our programs before we start getting excited with the coding. Okay, so when you look at our folder right now, we only have a one file. It's called lib. Okay, so I'm going to create 3 files. I'm going to create 3 folders, about 3 or 4 folders, and I'll explain what exactly each folder usually with the kind of code files that we're supposed to put there. So the first one I'm going to create is called screens. You can name it screens or pages. Okay. But then when we're doing mobile app development, it's better to call it screens. Okay. So the screens folder is going to have the screens that we want. Let's say login screen. If you have a login screen, register screen, and things like that. Then we're going to have what we call models. Okay. So models will hold classes. So these classes will help us convert data which comes from the internet, okay, into data that we can show in our screens. Okay. Then we are going to create another folder called services. Okay. So this is just to help us organize our Flutter code. So the whole architecture. Because at the end of the day, if you build an app that is not organized, then you realize that we're not going to be able to maintain it, and then developers who are going to come after us are going to be frustrated. So services are going to always have code which actually hits the internet and is able to fetch some data to us. Okay, services, the services folder, we put code which hits the internet and then returns some data to us. We put that inside the services folder, and then we can have a folder called. So we can have a folder called providers. Okay, so providers is like something that helps us manage state universally. Okay, so it's this stems from a state management library called. It's a very popular one, and it's recommended for production grade applications. Yeah. So for this sessions that we're going to be using, we're going to look at provider also as our state management. There's going to be a folder called providers. Okay, so these providers help us manage state. By state, I mean if someone logs in from the login screen, okay, then let's say we have asked the server of Restore University to identify for us a certain lecturer by their email and password. So if the email and password is correct, yes, they will bring back for us information about this lecturer, their first name, their last name, their contact. Okay, yeah, and whether their emails are what? Confirmed, the contacts are confirmed. So when this information is fetched and we are in the login screen, okay, there are manual methods of passing this information, let's say to the home page now, okay. Once you've left the login screen, you're now going to the home page. You want to be able to still access this person's information. So what we do is we use libraries or classes, okay. Those are the recommended ways. The local ways of all the ones that are not so recommended are these ones whereby, let's say, you pass data using constructors. This is not feasible. But if we wanted to pass like 15 items, we can't say title and then length, width, what, and all those aspects inside the same constructor. It makes our code not easy to use, okay? But these methods also work, but it's best if you're passing, let's say 3 items or 4, but other than that, it's not recommended. So that's why we shall have providers for state management. State management simply means we want to be able to have certain data in the memory of our app, of our computer or phone that can be accessed in multiple pages, okay? So we manage state, okay? So these are the major folders, okay? 1, models, providers, screens, services. And then we can also have a folder called helpers. So inside helpers folder, you can put any other code that helps us perform certain actions. For example, if you have code which will store, let's say, some tokens, authentication tokens. So when it comes to what we call networking and APIs that we're going to be using, our APIs will need the tokens. So a token is something you use a server, you should show a server, and a server says, okay, yes, you have the permission to what? Access this data. So without tokens, we can't access certain data. So we write what they call helper methods that help us store these tokens in memory and retrieve them. That's why we're going to look at certain packages, let's say like shared preferences that help us store some of these tokens. Okay. So this is basically the structure of a program that is clean, and it is something that we can always use. Okay, and we're going to use this. Okay, if you want to create any other folders, as long as it helps to make your program clean, you can always create it. Okay. So that being said, let me create a page. Okay, let me create a page. I'm going to call it a login. I'm going to create a page inside screens. Okay, so this is basically a screen. I'm going to call it login screen dot dat. Okay, so I want us to remove the confusion that the previous screen had. It had so much code. So right now we're going to start by creating a stateful widget for a login screen. So when I just do this, I type stf it will show me this. So these are my extensions showing me that I can create these stateful widgets without actually having to type them from scratch. So I can press tab. So when I press tab, it generates for me this code. Okay. Then all I have to do is rename. For example, here I can say login screen. I can say login screen. Okay. So let me first reverse that a bit. This login screen. So when I do this, notice that we still have errors. Okay? It is not yet completely created. So I highlight, like I said, we can always highlight. So when you highlight, it tells us that we are specifying a superclass, and here we have not yet imported anything. Okay? So remember, we are building for Android, so we have to import the material. So here, when we click that, it gives us quick fix options. So if we import widgets.dat, it will work, but here we need to import material. Flutter/material.dat. So I import it. So here we have a login screen, and we have put it inside screens. Okay, so our code is neat. We want screens to be put inside the screens folder. Screen files to be put into the screens folder. So here we have a login screen. Okay. So you notice how here it's returning a container first. So this is how a login screen looks like. This is a stateful widget. Why am I creating a stateful widget? Because usually login screens have aspects of maintaining certain state. Okay. So here I can decide now to do this. If I render this, if I try to show this, if I want to show this login screen on this app, what I'll have to do is I go back to to main. I go back to main. So here I don't really want this home page. It comes with the default Flutter app, so I'm going to comment it out. So when I comment it here, it throws an error. So here I can just remove this. I put my login screen name here. So I click this. So when I click this, it imports for me the file. So by importing, this is what I mean. It will add this line at the top of your code to say import library app /screen/login screen. Remember, library app is the name of the app we are having. Okay. So this is what we have done. We have created a login screen. So here it's telling us to use const with the constructor. Why? Because we are not passing anything to this screen here. So we can just say const. Okay. So after refreshing, you can notice that it is refreshing directly. It is changing. The changes are being reflected on the phone directly. And this is one of the powerful features of Flutter, hot reloading. When I just save like this, changes are reflected in my app. But then when I go back to my login screen, remember, I'm just returning a container that has nothing. Okay. But I would like to return something that shows certain structure of an app. So let me, instead of returning a container, I can return a scaffold. Okay. So what does a scaffold have? It has an app bar. Okay. So inside your app bar, you can decide to put anything. If you go back to this guy's code, you see that in their app bar, okay, they had the app bar widget and then it had a title. So this title, they put text. You can decide to put other stuff there. So we have an app bar, title. So title, you can even put another container. You can put another widget, or you can even put an icon. Okay. Let's try putting an icon. Icons dot. Let's say home. Okay. So as you can see, our app bars appeared there, and it has an icon on the top here. Okay. This icon represents home. Okay. Yeah. So yes, that is just showing you that in Flutter everything is a widget. You can put anything there. So instead of me putting, let's say, the text to say home, I just put an icon home. Okay. So let me introduce the concept of rows right here. Okay. Now that we say that Flutter is just made of widgets, and it's very flexible. You can put any widget almost anywhere. So here, let's say I want to put the word home in front of the icon, that home icon. I can introduce what they call a row. Okay, so I will cut this, Control X, then I'll say row. Okay, a row takes in children. So I click this. So the first child, remember children start from left to right. The first child I want is the icon, okay? Then the next child I want is a text widget. We say text widgets are universal, they are platform independent. So when I refresh, you'll see that we have the keyword, we shall have the icon and the home. Yeah, we shall have icon and the home text there, okay? So for now, let me try to do this so that it doesn't overwhelm me. Usually Flutter tells us to use the const keyword if our widgets down here don't have data that is dynamic. By dynamic means that the data changes, okay? So these are basically widgets. Widgets have properties. You can always change stuff. For example, if you want to change the size of this icon, it has a size property. I can give it, it's a double. A double meaning 2 decimal places, but if you put 1, it doesn't really cause an error. So I can say size 10. Let's see what size 10 looks like. You see, very small. But if I say size 40, size 40 is quite big and visible. Okay? But how do we know that we're still operating in the app bar? Does app bar have a color? So if you want, sometimes if you're not sure whether certain properties exist, you just try to type the word and then it shows you what exactly is needed. Let's say color. Okay, so we shall see here it has a property background color, foreground color, and surface tint color. But let's try to change the background color. So for us to change the background color, we shall need a color property. How do we change colors? We can decide to say colors or colors, the color we want. Which background do we want? Let's say green. Okay, we say green. When I refresh, that's going to be the background, okay? That's going to be the background. But then, when we're building apps usually, we also have to take into account that at certain points, we are going to have apps that, there are these phones that whose menus, let's say now like if you look at this emulator, this is a camera, okay? So this part might consume part of the app. The UI will not look so nice. So we have to introduce a widget called Safe Area. So for you to introduce a widget, when you've installed your extension, we have this. You just highlight, okay, and then you click wrap with widget. Okay, wrap with widget means you're now picking this scaffold widget. You want it to be a child of some other property. So here I want it to be a child of Safe Area. Okay, so Safe Area, when I do that, you notice how Safe Area has removed this app bar from this notification panel that Android has, okay? It has removed that app bar. So that's what a Safe Area does. It protects your app from consuming parts that are not designed for it. But sometimes some people deliberately don't have safe areas. So, but then we are designing a login screen. We have to have things that show that it's a login screen. For example, we can have this keyword login. Okay, then we can remove this icon. Okay, so feel free always to comment your code. You can comment certain parts that you don't want. And then this is a text widget. If I want to change the styles, I can say style, then I use this text style. So inside text style, I can change the size, the font size. So what if I try with font size 16? What does font size 16 have? Okay, it shows you can see how tiny the text is. What if I try with 22? Okay, so you can keep experimenting and changing. And what if I want the word login to be, let's say, white? Okay, it's a color property. And then how did we access, how did we change the color of the app bar earlier on? We used the word colors, and then we did this. Okay, so it's colors dot white. Okay, so white has shades. You choose the shade you want. There is white 70, white 60, up to white 10. But then I want the default one, so I say white 10. Okay, so I have it there. This is my login screen. So up there, it actually tells me that it's a login screen. So notice how we have used a layout widget row. Okay, and we said we were able to combine things such as multiple widgets. So such widgets can take multiple widgets, but horizontally, okay? So login there. So I'll first remove it, okay? So feel free to also remove widgets. Don't get too used to using too many widgets when you don't need them. So here I can remove this widget. Since I've demonstrated what we can use it for, I'm going to remove it. So the scaffold widget also has the body, okay? On top of the app bar functionalities are just for specifying the title of the screen that you want, but then there's always what they call a body. So we can here we can have a body. So a body can take in anything. So here we are going to look at the concept of layout widgets. So for this, I'm going to use what they call a column. So a column is the opposite of the rows. So a column also takes in children, but they are aligned vertically. And columns have properties, okay? So here, I'm just going to have sample text. I'm going to say text. Welcome to Risto University. Is my spelling correct? Okay, welcome to Risto University. Then I refresh. You can see that it has put my text here and it's not visible. So since I already added code for increasing the font sizes, I'll come here and copy my code. I paste it here. But the color of the text, I want it to remain black because there is a white background in this case. So I'll just change this. Yes, welcome to Risto University. We can see it there. Okay, so this is the concept. Columns align items vertically. So to prove that, I'm going to create another keyword. I'm going to copy this text widget, okay, and add more text down. I'll say I'll add this text here to prompt the user to log in. I'll just say this is login. Login. Welcome to Risto University. Login. Okay. Then here I'll just go down here and try to add this component. Let me just say size box height. I'll explain what it does shortly. So columns align our items vertically, but now our items don't look organized. So what we're going to do is use a certain property of a column that helps us to align items, either the items of the column in the center, in the start, or the end, vertically and horizontally. So here, I can have that. I can decide to say, let's say the cross-axis alignment. Okay. Cross-axis alignment is you're just telling it where across the screen do you want the components of the column to be. I can say cross-axis alignment dot baseline, okay, center, end, start, stretch. But for this particular design phase, I want it to be at the center. Okay. Cross-axis alignment, center. So I do this. But remember, we are dealing with text widgets. Okay. So text widgets, if you don't put them inside, let's say containers, usually they are free to float. Okay. And then I can now also put main axis alignment. Where on the screen vertically do I want these items to be? So I can say main axis alignment dot center. Okay, as we can see that. So here, another property of text that we can use is alignment, text align. So I can say text align dot center. Then here also I can say I copy the same thing, text align dot center. So right now it's telling me to highlight to make these items, these widgets constant, because I don't have any variables that are feeding into them. So it wants me to make the constant. Yeah. We full screen what we call a padding. Yeah, they call it padding. So what it does is padding adds some space between these edges, okay, and the content. So this one is padding whereby all of them are going to be equal to 8 from top, bottom, right, left. Okay, so we can see some padding added there. Okay, so this is a column. This is how we use columns in Flutter programming. So we look at the row with the column. Okay. So let's try to add what they call a text field. Okay, so that is our text field. Okay. So for this text field, we can decide to determine its width and height. For us to change the width and height of a text field, we can use a component called size box. So size box widget is a widget that basically is used to wrap other widgets within a specified dimension. For example, if we want a text field to have a height of a certain dimension and a width of a certain dimension, we use it that way. Okay, so if I want it to have a height of 40.0, then a width of, let's say, 300 pixels. I can do that. Okay, I can do that. Yeah, so that is our text field. As you can see, the text field has an this is where we type our text inside the text field. Okay, so a text field is something that is also universal. You don't have Cupertino text fields, and we also don't have, let's say, only Android specific text fields. Okay, they're universal. You can have them in any way. We can use them on any platform without having to specify that we only want to use a text field for Android or iOS. Okay, so another item that we want to see here is how to make this, how to give it a border. How do we give this text field a border? Okay, how do we give a Flutter text field a border? Because currently you can see that some people may not be able to identify that this is actually a text field. So usually we give text field borders, or if your design doesn't actually need to give it a border, you can always find other creative ways of playing with it. So the code is always actually what you make it. So for this case, I want to give my text field a border. Okay. By that, I will give it what they call, I'll first start by giving it a decoration. Okay. So a text field widget is a widget that you will always have. So decoration here, what will it take? To take in an input decoration. Okay. After it has taken in an input decoration, I want to give it a label. So I'll say label text. So here I can say, let's say, enter email, and I save. So there you can see that it has given it the label text already. Okay. So after saying that, I can check for another property called enabled border. Okay. So with this enabled border, it takes it just this attribute for outline input border. Okay. So the outline input border, you specify what you're going to have at the border side. Okay. So the border side can take in also this border side. Takes in this border side widget. Okay. Takes in this border side widget. So what do we put here? Okay. So border side, you specify what they call colors. For example, what do you want? What do you want the color to be? Okay. So still I want to use colors that are close to Risto's color. So I can say colors.green. Okay. And I save. I want to have colors.green. So width of such a border, I can say width. What do I want it to be? 2.0. So that's how thick it is going to be. Okay. And then also we have an aspect of focused borders. So right now I'm just trying to show you that for every widget we have in Flutter, you can actually try to customize it as much as possible with its properties. So here I say outline input border. Okay. So what does it take? Still border side. Then I'll specify that at the border side, what I want to see is a red color. Let's say color. Okay. I say colors.red. Okay. Width 2.0. Okay. So we have an error somewhere. So this is the beauty with this code editor. It always tells you that it always tries to give you a correction of if you have an error somewhere in your code, like a syntax error. Okay, so there I've forgotten to put a comma, but then I put my comma, it's no longer showing that. Okay. Yeah, so this is our text field. It's not the nicest text field, sorry about that. I thought I was typing inside here. Yeah. So if you're using such an emulator, it can also allow you to type directly from your keyboard. Otherwise, most times you just type from here like this. Okay. Yeah, so this is it about this text field. Let's say we can copy another one. We can copy it and paste it, and we create one for a password. Here I'll say enter password. Okay, as you can see. But then it is really wrong to show a red color when there is no error on your text field. Okay, it's really wrong to show a red color when there is no error on your text field. Also, as we can see, our text fields are not really looking so good here. Okay. They're not looking so good. So another aspect that we shall have to follow here is we're going to have to be able to space them. Okay. We're going to space them. So before that, I'm going to introduce a certain simple concept of responsive design. Responsive design simply means that you want your code to be written in a way that if the size of your screen changes, let's say you've changed from portrait to landscape, you want your code to be able to tell that you've changed from portrait to landscape. So here I'm introducing a concept of what they call media queries. Yeah. Yeah, so too many mediaquery.of context. Yeah. So here I introduce the size component. So this size thing can be used to find the width of a screen and the height of a screen. So for this case, let me try to use, let me try to give this text field a width according to the width of this screen. I want it to occupy let's say 80% of this, the width. So I'll say here size.width. So notice how it's giving me an error. It's giving me an error because I already told this. I told Flutter that I'm not going to be putting any variables that change. Yet here I am putting a variable that changes. So when I do this, width.this, okay, it gives it actually that, but I want it to occupy 80%. So I'll say 0.8. So 80%. So I can copy this and put it down here also. So that's a simple concept of responsive design. Okay. You can use media queries to find the current screen size, and then you just apportion. You say, I want this to consume this percentage of the screen. Okay. So here I'm giving it, I want it to consume 80% of the screen. Yeah. So because of this, I can even now go and remove this widget. So we can keep playing around with our code, remove widgets where need be. Okay. So for the height also, if we see that the height is not enough, we can always be able to change. Okay. So that being said, we can introduce us. If you don't want to use a lot of size boxes, we can use containers. So let me introduce containers here and also show how important they are. Container. So a container is also like a box widget in Flutter, and it helps us structure certain, it helps us hold the other widgets into it. So it can be given a height and a width and colors and all that. And most interesting part again is that it can be given margins. Okay, it can be given margins and paddings. By margin, it means that you want it to be, you're telling it that it has to have some space outside it. You want to give it, like, let's say I have a box and I want its margin from the wall to be, let's say 20 centimeters, meaning I want the box to be 20 centimeters away from the wall. So here I can say margin. Okay, then I can say edge insets dot. Then when I try to access this property, you can see we have all from left, top, right, bottom, from view padding, then there's dot only. But my personal preference most times is dot only. Why? It helps me specify the ones I want. For example, I can say I want to only put margins from the left and right. So there I can say only. So here I can specify left. I can say, let's say 10. Okay, 10 pixels. Then right, also 10 pixels. Okay. And then we have this here. Okay. So then there's still this text that is telling us that it needs to be constant. So these extensions that we install in Flutter actually shout a lot. And usually when they shout like this, it's just because they want you to format your code in a clean way. Not necessarily that you have a bug, but they just want you to format your code in a clean way that is really usable. So here I just try to do that so that it doesn't shout too much and sway us off. Okay. So we have looked at the concept of containers. We looked at rows. We looked at columns. Okay. But let's also look at margin top for here. Remember this text field and this text field, there is no space between them. So I want to give some space, but instead of using, let's say, a size box like this, size box, and I say, let's say height is 20.0. Okay, that. What I can do is I can just give it a margin top. I have less code, yet the same result. So, and that's what we always have to strive for. Have less code and yet have the same result. Always try to get certain results by writing less code, because less is better when it comes to programming. Yeah? Less is usually better. Because lesser code means you have to maintain, you have to spend less time reading through your code in case of an error and stuff like that. Okay, but then this color that we chose here is not really so good. So what we can do is we can say, we can change this border color to black And then when someone tries to put something, that's when we say green. Okay. So this one makes it's more appealing.
Yes.
Black.
Yes.
Green. Red usually is one used for warnings. So if I try to type here, okay, that is what I see. Okay. So I want us to be able to basically play around with this text field, because text fields are really important. Okay. So I think the next aspect we can look at right now, before we go and check out what lists are, is we can try to give these text fields what they call padding. Okay. So padding makes our text fields space the data. Because right now when we are typing, the data is almost touching the bottom. It's almost touching the bottom of the text field. So we don't want that. If we put that, then our program doesn't really look like professionals wrote it. So we always have to be empathetic that the user may not see certain aspects. Okay. For example, if you have certain letters like G, and then down there is no padding, things don't really look good. So here I can add something called content padding. Okay. So content padding simply means that I want to give some space. I don't want my content to actually sit down at the bottom of the text field. I want to give some space there. So content padding, we again use the same syntax we use for adding padding in most widgets. So we say content padding, page insets, dot. For now, I'm going to use symmetric, but I can decide to specify a specific padding for each side, left, right, top. Okay. But for now, I'm going to say symmetric. When we say symmetric, meaning you're specifying for the vertical ones at once and also for horizontal ones. For horizontal space. So horizontal is single I here. Okay. And we refresh and try to see. So this is for the password field so far, what I put. You see, it is now aligned at least in the center. So we don't have issues with some words not being visible. So I can copy this code. Okay. So you also notice how I'm copying this code and pasting in multiple places. So this is repetitive code. At some point, we're going to look at what they call refactoring, how we can create one widget and be able to use it in multiple places. Okay. So today we're using this as a benchmark. You're seeing how I'm copying code and reusing it. Yeah. So that's the beauty of Flutter. You can reuse a lot of code. Okay. Yeah. So as you can see, it's now looking a little bit better. Okay. It's looking a little bit better. So another aspect we can try to investigate here. We try to put the cross-axis aligned page to be centered, and the main axis alignment to be centered for this one. Okay. What else can we add here? So a login screen cannot be complete when we don't have what we call, when we don't have like a button. Okay. At least we have to have a button. So we are going to try to create a green elevated button. Okay. Why? We're going to put the word login in it. So it's going to be the login button that someone can click when they want to create, when they want to send, let's say, data that has been picked from the forms, these text fields, and sent to a server. Okay. We can always use a green elevated button. So green, I'm just saying green, but then you can always put anything you want in it. Yeah. So for that, what do we do? Good enough, this is like English. So when we say elevated button, it's just this. Okay. So when we use this extension, you see that it's telling us that an elevated button will take in a property on pressed and a child. So a child can be items like the text, or you can put some icons and all that. But let's first try to modify this. Okay. Okay. So we can leave it empty for now. Then child here, I can decide to say a row, and we shall see why. Okay, can see why here. So when I save and refresh, you can see that it's going to, this is the elevated button. Okay, this is the elevated button, but it still has no color. Okay, still has no color because we have not specified. First is be able to put some children. So I'm going to have a text widget. Text, and I say log into Bristol University.
What's wrong with the internet phone network? Have you people come with it? No.
Constant, so that my editor stops shouting.
It's recording.
Okay, to university. So on top of that, I can decide to now say here, log into Bristol University. I can now decide to give it a height.
It's okay. The other side doesn't have network.
Custom height and width here. So height and width properties of a container. Here you say height. Okay. Height, let's say I want to give it 50.0. Okay. Okay. So for width, like we had a size button, right? We had a size variable. Okay. For that size variable is the one we're going to be able to access. So I'll say the size dot width. Okay. Size dot width, but I don't want it to occupy the whole screen. So I'll say times % of the screen. Okay. Yeah. So as you can see, it has changed. Yeah. So next thing is let us try to now change.
Then there is that file for documents orange tena ibakata nananeta paper jinkata kujo wala gana receipt na MTN line low MTN and then you call me.
So you want me to go alone? We'll live in Sarah, but Sarah is taking.
Home today is that inside every DAT program, usually there is boilerplate code, but it doesn't mean that you should use that boilerplate code. So you can always comment it out or delete it. So here we just comment the code out. So I can decide to now delete it because I don't need it. I want that each time this app is open, the login screen is showed first. Where is the login screen? It's inside the screens folder. Okay, it's inside the screens folder. That's where our login screen is. Okay, so yes, and
So you take that then
for it to be let's say in the upcoming lectures. But then I don't want us to take in too many concepts. Main file, okay. We are putting the screens folder, so we just imported it and we put it here, okay. So those are concepts. We have basically touched how to modularize our code, okay. We have touched layouts, we have touched containers, we have touched size boxes, we have touched modifying properties of certain widgets in Flutter. We have also looked at the text. We have also looked at the text field. Okay, how do we try to collect data? Okay, so that's a sample text field. Also, we have looked at a column and rows. Okay, so basically, this is the login button. And remember, we had put a row here. Okay, so I don't want us to waste it. After putting this row, I want us to put an icon in front of it to imitate some action. So icon, I want us to have an icon for an arrow, a forward arrow. So where do we have it? So it's arrow forward, okay? Meaning if you touch here, you're going to log in. It's going to take you somewhere. So I want to give this icon a color. So it has a color property. So still we use this keyword colors dot, then the color I want to give it. I want to give it a white color. Yeah. So because white will pop out on top of that green that we have. And then a row can also have certain properties, just like the column had. So we can have main axis alignment. So I can say main axis alignment dot space between. Okay. And we see what it does. So when you say main axis alignment, the space between, the items are going to be spaced equally from each edge. Okay, so it will push this button, this icon, to the extreme edge. Okay, then it brings this text to this other edge. So if there were 3 items, the third item would be centered. Okay, so that's what this property does. Okay, so we can always play around with that. Yes. So on top of that, I want us to also cover that aspect we talked about in the slide about a stateful widget. A stateful widget is used to carry some state. So we are going to add a loading indicator. Okay. So when someone presses the button, we want to show it that something is loading. If we want to change this icon to what? To loading. Otherwise, we want the icon to remain to that arrow forward. Okay. So for that, we are going to do this. Yeah. Again, to make our code more readable, we can always collapse these items so that we only remain with the button. Okay, collapse these items, collapse them. Then we only remain with this button. Okay. So this unpressed one is where we're going to implement logic. But for the beginning, what we're going to say is bool. We create a variable bool, and we can call it is loading. Or we can just say loading. Okay. So initially, we know that when someone enters this screen, the loading has to be false because nothing is loading. No one has pressed any button. So loading is equals to false. Okay. But then the the moment someone presses this button, okay? So I'll say if is loading or loading. If loading is true, stop the loading, else make it load. So here, if loading is true, make it equals to false. Okay, so this one, when I just put something like this, it means it either evaluates true or false. Okay, so here, if loading is not true, then we shall turn it to true, meaning change the state to what? To loading. True. Okay, so yeah, now that we have, and remember we have put this code inside this property of the button on pressed. So on pressed is where you put certain function. What do you want to happen when something has been, when a button has been pressed? So in other words, we are looking at the gesture when someone has pressed the button, someone has touched this button. What do you want to happen? Okay. So in order for us to know that something is happening, we are going to put this code here. We're going to check. So if loading is true, okay, if loading is true, then we use this operator. We looked at this operator when we're looking at operators in that programming. Okay, so if loading is true, show a circular progress indicator. Okay, this. Else, show that icon. But then here it is warning us that the value of the variable loading is inside, it's an invalid constant variable. So what we do is we go and we try to see where we made this widget constant. Okay, where did we make our widget constant? So here we made it, we made this row constant here. So when we remove this, that error is going to go. So we first make this other widget constant. So we have a circular progress indicator. Remember, we have already tapped our button. So if I tap it again, it removes the value of loading to false. Okay, that is now state management. Okay, but let's just organize our thing a bit. So here I'm again showing you the concept of using multiple widgets. So I'm using a child box here. Why? Because I want to change the size of the loading indicator. Here I'm going to say height. Let's say I can give it a height of 30. You keep modifying to see if the height is perfect. Then the width also I want it to be 30.0. You keep modifying to see if what you're doing is perfect. Okay, so that. Okay, the size is modest. Now the color. I want to deal with the color. So I type color here. Okay, and I say colors.white. Okay, and I say colors.white, you can see that it has now changed to white. Okay. So when I tap it and it's not loading, it starts loading. So when it's loading like this, a user may wait until a result has what? Returned from, let's say, the server. The server can now say this person's email and password is incorrect, and then you will display the message. Okay, but then we're not going to get into that today. So today our goal was to be able to show you how to build basic widgets and use basic widgets. So we have looked at the stateful widgets, and also what they are. This is a practical example of what you can do with a stateful widget, meaning it changes state. State can, for this variable loading, can change either to true or false. Okay, and state can also mean the value of, let's say, a string. A string can also change. For example, we can change the value of strings. Let me try to complicate this a bit, but it's the last thing we're doing. I can say button text is equals to what? Then I say login to Restore University. Okay, so that's the button text. Now let's go and see how to manipulate it. Still here, if loading is false, okay, if the loading is false, we are going to change button text to what? We're going to change it to login to Restore University. Okay. put it here. Else, button text is please wait. Or we can say loading. Let me put some dots. Let us test this. Okay, so we pick this button text, and instead of this text widget having this constant text that we have hard coded, we can put it here. So this shows us how to make reactive user interfaces in Flutter. Okay, so I'm going to hot restart. I pressed that there. Okay, so hot restarting essentially reloads the Flutter application. Okay, it reloads the Flutter application. So here is the thing. I think it has hot restarted. Let's try to click this button. Okay, when I click this, it shows loading and then my what? Loading indicator, circular progress indicator. When I click it again, what happens? Login to Restore University. So that is an example of state management, but this is local. With time, we are going to show you how to manage state in a big way, whereby even, let's say, some other screen somewhere can be able to know that something is loading here. Okay, that is how you manage state professionally, Flutter app. But then for today, the takeaway is that these are some of the widgets. This is how we play around with Flutter programming. We keep changing variables here and there to make sure a certain UI of ours comes out. Okay, so yes, today we have looked at this, and tomorrow we're going to introduce other advanced concepts, and those concepts will be determined by questions that you can ask in the group. So I want to see the questions you ask in the group today. You can ask any question about what we have covered today. Okay, you can ask any question about what we have covered today, so that I can be able to prepare something that is more comprehensive. So I am actually teaching you multiple concepts, but in the simplest way possible, so that you can be able to also build Flutter apps that are really cool. Okay, so this is like a ternary operator. Okay, instead of using if statements in the widgets, I use this. So this means that if loading is true, show this size box, and then this is like an else. Okay, when you see this colon, it's like an else do this other thing. Okay, yeah. So that was basically it for today. Yeah, I hope the concepts were not too many to master, but we have touched a bit of layout widgets, stateful widgets. We've also looked at some material widgets, and yes, how to play around with the code basically. I try to limit it to a real world example of the login screen. We have a text field, okay? We have a text field. Other things we can do to this text field is add an icon here of like an eye. So whereby we can show or hide a password here, okay? Those are other things we can always do to it, yeah. So that is basically what I had for today. So thank you very much. And I would like to take some questions. I really need some questions from anyone, really. Okay, Ali?
Yes, good evening, everyone.